That's the sound of seabirds feeding. Shearwaters, albatross, gannets, giant petrels, from behind an ocean-going fishing vessel. One of the great problems with the fishing industry worldwide is the accidental killing of hundreds of thousands of seabirds every year. Some people are trying to fix that. And today, we're talking to one of those people. Now I'm speaking with Dr. Ben Sullivan, a biologist based in Hobart, and was involved in, deeply involved in the development of a device known as Hookpod. Ben, welcome to the Bird Emergency.
Thanks very much, Grant.
Ben, can you give us a bit of an idea of how the idea for the Hookpod came about and the development process?
Yeah, sure. Some of your listeners might know there's a really serious problem with seabirds, particularly albatross, but some other seabirds as well, being killed in longline fisheries. So the process of that happening is the baits are put on the hook at the stern of the vessel, and then there's a long line with many sort of branch lines hanging from them. So you might have a line with up to 3,000 to 5,000 baited hooks on it. And as they sort of are set off the stern of the vessel, it takes a while for them to sink, and birds dive down and grab the hooks, and they become hooked and pulled underwater and drown. And several 100,000 birds die each year this way around the world in longline fisheries. And albatross are particularly threatened by this process because they're very active scavengers behind the boat, so they dive for these baits. Currently, there's 22 species of albatross, and 16 of them are threatened with some form of extinction, and a lot of that is due to death in longline fisheries. There are some other processes, but that's the main threatening process they're facing. And so the idea for the Hookpod came around. Over the years, there's been a lot of work done looking at how this can be prevented, obviously, dating back as far as the late 1980s, really, when the problem first came to light. Some of the things that have been used are they fly streamers behind the boat to try and scare the birds away, but they have some operational challenges because they sometimes get hooked up with the fishing gear, and then when the wind's blowing in a crosswind, they blow them off the hook, so they're not as effective. There's things like adding weight to the line. So if you add weight to the line, it actually makes the line sink more quickly as it leaves the stern of the vessel, and that reduces the risk also. And also setting at night is something that can be quite effective for albatross, particularly who are diurnal feeders, so they tend not to be as active during the night. So there have been a range of things that people have been using over the years, but they all have their limitations, and used in combination, sometimes a fishery will require you to fly streamers behind the boat and fish at night, or fly streamers and add weight to your gear. And they have shown to be effective in some fisheries, but there's always operational challenges and limitations to when fishermen can and can't fish with this gear. There's also some safety concerns with adding weight to the gear because it creates a safety hazard for crew when they're hauling the gear. Sometimes the weights come flying back and have hit crew and caused some pretty serious injuries, even deaths in a couple of cases over the years. So look, there have been things that people have been working on for many years, but there's always been this desire to find a sort of a single solution, something that solves the problem. It can be one thing that a fisherman does or adds to their gear, which prevents seabirds from being killed. And that's where the actual idea for the Hookpod came from. So the Hookpod is a small polycarbonate or a plastic capsule. It attaches to the line, and when the fishermen are baiting up the hook, they simply get the point of the hook and they hold it against the bottom of this small housing, plastic housing, and it actually loads the hook into a plastic housing. So when it then sits on the hook and disarms the barb and the point, and that's obviously the part that hooks the birds when they're actually diving for the baits. The fisherman throws the Hookpod in the water and it sinks, protecting the barb and the point of the hook from being taken by seabirds. And it has a pressure release mechanism, and that's the really clever bit. So when it gets to 20 metres depth, it actually opens up and releases the baited hook. So it fishes as normal, but it takes it through that first 20 metres where it's a danger to seabirds diving and taking the baited hooks. It's quite a simple bit of equipment in some ways, but it's clever in that, it's small, it's relatively cheap, and it has this pressure release mechanism, which means that it does take it through that danger zone for seabirds. So the driving force has been finding something that works, that fishermen want to use because it's simple and fits into their operation easily and is affordable for them. And it means that it can actually open up opportunities for fishermen to fish during the day, they might be restricted to fishing during the night in some fisheries because of danger to seabirds. But with hook pods, you have a simple single-stop solution which opens up opportunities for them to fish and is operationally simple for them to use.
Is there a demonstrated rate of effectiveness that with the use of the hook pod as against not using the hook pod?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing trials. The idea, it's been quite a while now. It's almost 10 years since we first had the concept. It was drawn on the back of a beer coaster in the UK many years ago. We've had a lot of years of development and research at sea. So we've done trials in several countries around the world: South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Hawaii. And in all those fisheries, we've actually shown that using the hook pod reduces bycatch by up to around 95%. So
that's
there
amazing.
Are still, yeah, no, look, it's highly effective. It's really effective. We're at the stage now where we've demonstrated that research has been published in peer-reviewed journals, so it's out there in the public domain, scientifically sort of demonstrated. We're now at the stage now where we're sort of, rather than doing trials to prove its effectiveness, we're now sort of doing demonstration trials where we're fitting out vessels in fleets for them to fish over a longer period of time to sort of show that it's effective over a long period, that it's durable, etc.
So have you got any idea of the number of birds, let's say albatross in particular, that have been not killed, use that terminology rather than saved, over the 10 years of the development? I mean, 95% is enormous.
Yeah, look, it's hard to put an exact figure on it because, as I say, we're at the stage now where we're just at the point where we're sort of trying to roll this out into fisheries. So in another year or two, we'll have a better handle on actual numbers of birds that have been saved or not killed, as you say. But in the research that we've done, the sort of proof of concept, I guess it is, the initial stuff, we've shown fisheries where they're catching seabird mortality is recorded at the number of birds caught per 1,000 hooks. That's kind of the metric that's used around the world. And we've seen, a reduction down to sort of 0.001 birds per 1,000 hooks. So, it's without being able to put an exact number on it, we're definitely in fisheries that are using hook pods, there's a tangible and real sort of difference being made using the hook pod versus, what the other mitigation measures that people use in combination, such as, night setting, line weighting, etc.
I would imagine that the hook pod solution is very, very cost effective for the fishermen who take it up.
Yeah, it is. There's obviously a capital outlay. There's an investment to buy hook pods to set your boat up. They cost around it's about $7 to $8 per unit. So if you're fishing on a boat with 1,000 plus hooks, there's a $7,000 to $8,000 investment, but that return comes very quickly. We have two models of hook pods. One actually has an LED light in it, so it has an autonomous light source. In a lot of fisheries around the world, what they do is to attract bait fish, they put chemical light sticks on their gear, so that attracts bait fish, and then their target species, such as tuna or swordfish, etc., are attracted to the balls of activity from the bait fish. And what we've tried to do is twofold. We're trying to reduce the use of chemical light sticks because they're not great. A lot of them end up in the marine environment. So we're sort of trying to give a light source which actually removes that sort of potential for marine waste. But also by building in a light source that runs off two tiny little watch cell batteries, those little flat ones, it makes it very cheap. So if you look at the cost, the sort of capital outlay to set up with hook pods, you more than recover that in 12 months with the money that you save by not having to buy chemical light sticks. Plus also we've played a part in reducing marine debris as well. So there's a direct sort of trade-off, and it comes out in favour of the fishermen. And there is another model as well that doesn't have the LED source, the LED light included, so it's smaller. Some fisheries like the slightly smaller model. But again, there's operational savings because you don't have to add weight to your gear, which costs money, but also has safety hazards for fishermen. You don't have to fly streamers behind your boat, which has all sorts of problems at times in certain wind conditions, becoming fouled with the main line and causing all sorts of dangerous sort of situations where things hook up and foul up. So there's a real cost saving with one model, but with both models there's operational savings as well.
It sounds like there should be very little resistance from the fisheries operators to the Hookpod. So are you confident that most major fisheries in the world will roll this out?
Look, that's certainly our plan. We want to sort of save as many albatross as we can. I mean, it takes quite a bit of time. I mean, there's two sides to sort of getting a new device such as this into a fishery. There's the technical side where you have to do all the R&D and the at-sea testing and we had our challenges. Every time we put the gear in the water, something else would come up and you think, oh, I didn't think of that. So, it took several years to iron all that out, but now we've got the technical side completely sorted. But then there's sort of the regulatory side as well. So, fisheries operate under government regulations about what they can and can't do and what they can put on their gear and how they have to operate to sort of have the most sustainable fishery. And so we're now sort of working with governments, lobbying governments and trying to use our science, the published papers, etc., and contacts we have with industry to get those regulation changes, which means that it's a viable option that fishermen are able to use. And we've had some good success there. We're very, very close to having regulations adopted in a few of the key countries and also working with some of the high seas tuna commissions, which are sort of big international bodies which have many countries represented that fish for tuna and swordfish on the high seas. And we're close to getting the regulation change we need in a couple of those key bodies as well. So there's a little bit of work to be done in terms of the regulatory stuff, but we're very close. And once we get that, because we have the technical side and the science side sorted, then we're kind of ready to roll it out and start, as you say, trying to get this adopted in fisheries around the world that target tuna and swordfish.
Are the Australian and New Zealand governments on board yet?
Yeah, they've been great. We've done quite a bit of work in Australia and New Zealand. They've been very supportive. We're close to getting close to achieving what we want to do in both those countries. So we've had very good support from the government bodies in both countries to do trials, but also to get the regulation changed to make it a viable option in fisheries there.
And Hookpod as a corporate entity is based in the UK. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So the UK and European fisheries, are they supportive as well?
Yeah, they are. It's slightly more complicated in Europe, obviously, because of the European Union, the regulatory side of it has been a bit more challenging, but we're certainly making good progress for sure.
Oh, that's really good news. Ben, how did you kind of come up with the idea and sketch it out on a beer coaster in a pub in England?
So for many years, I worked for BirdLife International, coordinating their marine program. And there's two brothers who sort of set up FishTech, the company that has sort of been responsible for developing the Hookpod. And one of those brothers contacted me, just found me online because I'd done a bit of work developing other measures for fisheries, different gear types, sort of trawl fisheries and etc. And we just got talking and we just thought, what's the simplest way to come up with a single stop solution? And we had the idea that, using pressure, which is kind of inherently reliable, if you can capture that pressure, doesn't matter what the environmental conditions, or if you take a device down to 1 atmosphere or 10 metres, you know what that pressure is. And if you take it to 20 metres, same thing. So we thought if we can capture that pressure, then you've got something that's reliable and is always going to work. So that's kind of the initial idea. And then we thought, well, how do we go about that? How big does it have to be? What's it going to be made of, etc. But it was really about finding something which was reliable and wasn't sort of subject to the vagaries of, different environmental conditions, different winds, different salinities, etc. So that's where the idea for the pressure release mechanism came from.
Oh, I salute the ingenuity. It's a really simple but brilliant concept.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is quite simple. As I say, there are a lot of challenges to get there. As you can imagine, there is developing any sort of new technology, and fishing boats are pretty challenging places to work at times. But just because, you're at sea and, trying to fix things on the hop when you're at sea is pretty tricky. But no, look, we've had some great support from industry as well. And, we think we're really onto something which can make a massive difference to conservation of albatross and other seabirds.
Well, that's obviously why I'm speaking to you. When I came across the Hookpod and I was just searching seabirds, seabird conservation, and I thought, this just looks too simple. How can it be this good? So I'm rapt that it looks like it's going to roll out and hopefully it'll be a worldwide success story because it's going to save a lot of birds.
Yep, absolutely. That sort of was the driving force, and it is pretty exciting. It's kind of the simplicity of it, I think, that makes it such a great project.
Yeah. Now, Ben, how long will a unit last in the working environment?
Yeah, well, look, we've had units that have been working and are still working reliably after 3 years, and then it's made of a very strong polycarbonate. It's got all the moving parts, such springs, etc., are all made from marine-grade stainless steel. So all the componentry should stand up. We're expecting they'll last for 5 to 6 years.
It's $7 a pop. That sounds brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good. And, as I say, to date at 3 years, they aren't showing any sign of having problems. So we're pretty confident that it's going to be very durable product.
It's not affected too much by water temperature, like you can use it in the Arctic, the Antarctic and the Pacific Seas as well?
Yeah, there aren't, the precision of the opening depth may vary slightly, but it's always been sort of, the original ones sank to 10 metres. And now we're opening them at 20 metres. And one of the reasons for that, and I guess the point was, yes, it may vary slightly, but it's only like plus or minus a metre. So it's not important in terms of how effective they are. It's a very minor variation that they do open very precisely. But one of the reasons we're taking them deeper to 20 metres is in some work we've done in Brazil, we've discovered that they also reduce bycatch of sea turtles. So it's kind of early days on collecting that data, but it looks like if we can take them a bit deeper, it may be that we've found a solution not just for seabird bycatch, but also for marine turtles, which are seriously threatened by bycatch and longline fisheries as well. So it's kind of early days on that one, but it's pretty exciting. And if we had a solution which worked, is cross taxa, works for both seabirds and turtles, then that'd be brilliant.
Ben, what's next for you? Like, is Hookpod your main project?
It's certainly one of my main projects. So Hookpod is kind of an offshoot of another company called FishTech Marine. They're related. They're just separated for sort of business reasons. But so we work on a range of things. We're working on pingers to keep marine mammals out of nets. We're looking at developing a device to reduce shark bycatch in fisheries as well. So there's a few things that I'm working on, but Hookpod's been a sort of major project for the last sort of 8 to 10 years. So, yeah, it's certainly a big part of what I do.
Now, something that I ask everybody who comes on the project here, what is your favourite bird?
Oh, it'd have to be a giant petrel.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just love them. They're prehistoric. They're fantastic. Yeah.
The marauders of the sea?
They are. Yeah, no, they're great. I lived in the Falklands for several years, and I used to look out of my office window, and there was giant petrels fighting around the sewage outlet all day, and I just developed a fascination for them.
Hanging around outside the sewage outlet.
Yeah, that's it. And they can carry on too.
Boy, oh boy. Now, were you a bird nut as a kid?
No, I wasn't actually, Grant. No, not really. I mean, I've always had an interest in wildlife generally, and I studied zoology and sort of headed down a marine. I've always had a love of the sea and the ocean, and I kind of got into seabird conservation just through marine biology type studies. I'm not a marine biologist per se, but that's sort of like the route that I've taken. And it's a love of the ocean and just of conservation, and that led me to birds, and that's kind of how I got there.
And I guess when you're working with seabirds, it leads you to visit some of the most wild, remote and amazing places on the face of the earth.
Yeah, no, it sure does. There's some incredible places. Yeah.
When you were in the Falklands, that was after the war, I'm guessing?
Oh, yeah, a long time after the war. It was around 2000.
Was there any damage to the sort of seabird habitat that was apparent as a result of the war when you were there?
No, not really. No, most things had been sort of tidied up. I mean, there's a few existing landmine fields around the Falklands, so that's, I guess that's potential risk for any wildlife and for people, but they're fairly limited and well sort of delineated, so it's not really an issue. But, it's just an amazing place, particularly in summer. It's just teeming with wildlife, with seabirds, penguins, whales. It's an amazing place, yeah.
How healthy is the giant petrel population on the Falklands?
They're doing pretty well, actually. Giant petrels are doing better now than we thought they were sort of 10 or 15 years ago. Part of that is that a couple of new populations were discovered, significant populations. And I think, giant petrels are doing okay. They're not threatened under the IUCN Red List anymore. They were at one point. So I think, they're recovering, and also there's been, some significant healthy populations discovered in the last 20 years. So, I think the giant petrels will be all right, hopefully.
So in the course of your research, both prior to the Hookpod project and as part of it, where's the most astounding wildlife destination that you have been to?
Oh, I love the Falklands, but the most incredible wildlife place I've been to would have to be South Georgia. It's just incredible, amazing place, yeah. In terms of just the sheer size of the populations they have of seabirds, particularly penguins and albatross and whale activity and seals. South Georgia's just absolutely teeming with wildlife in the summer months. It's an incredible place. And in that landscape, it's so dramatic, and the history with Shackleton and the whaling history. It's an incredible place.
Yes, it's on the wish list for many, many, many of us, I think.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. It really is. Yeah. It blows your mind, South Georgia. Yeah.
Ben, thanks so much for spending this time with us and introducing the Hookpod concept. And it's great when you're doing, or when I'm doing a program like this, to actually have some good news to share.
Yeah, it's cool to work on projects which are provide solutions. So yeah, look, it's been good fun. It's been challenging, but really rewarding as well. So you meet some interesting people along the way. It's been a great project.
Well, I doff my cap to you, Ben. I think it's a simple, basically foolproof concept, and I can't really see any valid resistance points for the industry to not get on board and make this a solution, a worldwide solution to a really big problem.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Grant. It's been good to take part.
Thanks again, Ben. If you're interested to know more about Hookpod, check out the company's website, hookpod.com. They're on all the socials, Twitter, @Hookpod, and you can check out Fish Tech Marine and see all of their projects. And Fish Tech is Fish Tech with a K, fishtechmarine.com. Their socials are Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And on Twitter, it's @FishTechMarine, again with a K. I'm Grant Williams. You can contact me at The Bird Emergency, on Twitter @BirdEmergency. Thanks for listening.